let's talk about functions. A function is sort of like a machine, all right? So a function in math is like a machine. You put something inside the machine, and then you get something out of the machine. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's say if we have a restaurant. So let's say this is our restaurant, and we order a cookie restaurant, okay? We order a cookie restaurant. Now, every day we have some number of customers coming into our restaurant to buy our cookies, and each customer wants two cookies, okay? Each customer wants two cookies. So if I have one customer, well, I'm gonna need two cookies to satisfy them. If I have two customers, I'm gonna need four cookies, right? Because each customer needs two cookies. So if I have one customer, I'm just gonna need two cookies. If I have two customers, well, I'm gonna need two plus two cookies, which is four cookies. If I have three customers, how many cookies am I gonna need? I'm gonna need six cookies, right? If I have three customers, I'm gonna need six cookies. And that's kind of like a function, right? This is basically a function. And to represent this, I can rewrite this as like this. So whenever we're representing a function, you use this weird symbol where you have the f on the outside and you have this x in parentheses on the inside. This is just f of x. Okay, so the way you pronounce this is f of x. And this is going to be equal to 2x. Okay, f of x equals 2x. So imagine if x represents the number of customers in my restaurant, okay? If x represents the number of customers in my restaurant. So if I have one customer when x is equal to 1, well, what happens if I put in 1 for x? Well, I'm going to get 2, right? If I plug in 1 in for x, I get 2 times 1, which is just 2. So that means, right, this matches up with what I wrote before, right? If I have one customer in my restaurant, I'm going to need two cookies to satisfy their cravings. If let's say if I have two customers, well, I'm going to plug in 2 for x, and I get 2 times 2, right? 2 times this new 2, which is going to be equal to 4. So that means that if I have two customers in my restaurant, I'm going to need 4 cookies. And let's do another example. Let's say if I have 3 customers, well, this is just going to be 2 times, in this case, x is equal to 3, right? Because we have 3 customers. 2 times 3, which is going to be equal to 6. So that means if I have 3 customers in my restaurant, I'm going to need 6 cookies to satisfy their cravings. And that's essentially what a function is, right? You have an input. In this case, my input represents the amount of customers I have. I plug that input into my function, and I get some output out that represents something else. In this case, my input, aka my x value. So input can also be written as your x value. My x value is just the number of customers that are coming into my restaurant. And my output, or aka my y value, right, what I get out of this function, y value is just going to be the amount of cookies I need. Okay. So if I were to list this out in a chart, which I did in the beginning, this right over here, this row right over here would represent all my x values, right? This represents the amount of customers I have. 1 customer, 2 customers, 3 customers. And then the y value would represent, well, the amount of cookies I would need. 1 customer needs 2 cookies, 2 customer needs 4 cookies, and so on. So that's essentially what a function is. You have an input, put it into the function, and you get an output. And mathematically, how would we represent this? So let's say if I have 4 customers coming into my restaurant, how many cookies would I need? Well, in this case, the way to represent this is, okay, you have f of 4 right over here. Okay, so if you're trying to represent kind of in this case, the amount of cookies I would need for 4 customers, well, instead of this f of x right over here, f of x represents sort of an unknown amount of people, right? This represents an unknown amount of people, right? right? You can think about this f of x as this x right over here is an unknown amount of people. However, when we have 4 customers, now we know what x is equal to. Now we know that x, aka the amount of customers, is equal to 4. So instead of f of x right over here, we put in a 4 where x originally was. So f of x turns into f of 4. Now, if x is equal to 4, well, all we have to do is substitute 4 into our function. So we have 2 times 4, which is 8. So f of 4, the amount of cookies for 4 people, is going to be 8. Let's do another example. Let's say if we have 6 customers, how many cookies would we need if each customer needed 2 cookies? Well, in this case, we're basically trying to find out what f of 6 is equal to, right? Since we know the x value is 6, well, we're trying to find out what the y value is, right? So when the x value is equal to 6, aka 6 customers, how many cookies do I need? Well, all I have to do is just substitute in 6 in for x. So it's not really anything complicated. All you have to do to solve these types of equations is, well, you take a look at what your function originally was, you take a look at what x value kind of the problem is telling you to plug in, and you just substitute the 6 with where the x's were. So this is going to be f6 is going to be 2 times 6, right? You notice how before all of this was x's, but now if I want to find out f of 6, well, I just turn everything into a 6, right? So all the x's get turned into 6, and I get f of 6 is equal to 12. Now, before I leave you with all of this function knowledge, there's one more thing about functions that, you kind of have to know. So notice how, right, in my machine, right, my customer machine, whatever it's called, well, we know that one customer leads to 2 cookies, 2 customers lead to 4 cookies, and so on. And you notice how each x value or each input that I have leads to only one output. So this is another important thing about functions. So every x value you put inside a function will always have only one y value. So let me show you this on a graph, okay? So this is the graph of my function. F of x is equal to 2x, right? This is my customer function. Notice how, right? When there's one customer, there's, well, 2 cookies, right? When there's 2 customers, there's 4 cookies, right? So this is the same exact function that I used. And you notice how for every x value that I have, well, there's only one y value that supports it. If I have something like this, you notice how when x is equal to 3, right? When x is equal to 3, it leads to 2 y values, meaning that this right over here, this circle, is not a function, right? In my previous example before, every x value is only linked up to one y value, then that is a function. That is what makes a function a function. But for this other circle shape, well, each x value has 2 y values in this case, right? For the point I'm on, right? This x value has 2 y values, which means that this is not a function.